Little Internet. It's Matt here, and today I'm going to be talking about a book series that I would like to see turn into a TV series in the style of Game of Thrones. Obviously, it's a great time to be a medieval fantasy fan because HBO just knocked it out of the park when it comes to Game of Thrones, and now everybody's trying to come up with the next Game of Thrones book series that they can turn into a TV show. Obviously, Amazon drew billions of dollars. Lord of the Rings franchise, great, well done. That's going to be amazing. Today, basically, I'm talking about maybe book series not named Lord of the Rings that I would like to see become a TV show. So, obviously, there have been some other attempts. We've had MTV try to go with the Shannara series. I enjoyed the Shannara series back in high school. MTV spent $2 or $3 on it. It looked cheap, and also they tried to put pop music into every episode, and hence it was horrible. So that was a mistake, not necessarily the fault of the material, but the execution. I've heard talk that maybe Wheel of Time is going to be turned into a project. I read that series. Robert Jordan, loved it at first. First few books, I was like, this is great. By the time I finished the series, I kind of regretted starting it. It's very inconsistent and bloated, but the magic system was cool, and that would probably look cool on TV. But I wasn't crazy about the writing in that one. There's David Eddings, the Belgariad series. You've got some talk. So we'll come back to this, but Netflix is doing The Witcher. So The Witcher was a book series that then was turned into a game that is now being turned into a TV show. So that's Netflix Gambit. But the show I want to talk about, the series turning into a show I want to talk about, is actually what I think Witcher borrows heavily from. So basically, Geralt the Witcher is, to put it kindly, an homage, to put it unkindly, a ripoff of Elric. The Elric saga, written back in the 70s, maybe even as far as into the 80s, but it was Michael Moorcock, and he wrote about Elric of Melniboné, and he's an albino with long white hair, and he has a two-handed sword, and he uses sorcery. Hence, you can see the obvious parallels. He's also called the White Wolf, which is the nickname for The Witcher. So, anyway, it's the original, the OG White Wolf. That series was great. It was the first time I read it. It was the first anti-hero that I'd ever read about, and it just was amazing. And maybe he's more of a doomed hero than an anti-hero, but he does some unheroic things, and that was like just blew me away. But yeah, so the Elric saga, he's basically like a Targaryen, if you put it into Game of Thrones terms. His race, his house, has been kind of the ruling. They ruled the planet, and they control dragons, use dragons. They have kind of kept through violence, controlled through violence. There's also some inbreeding going on, which is kind of why maybe at the end of their line, he's the 428th and last emperor. He's an albino, and he's physically very sickly and requires a lot of drugs and herbs to try to just keep him alive. Yeah, so he decides to go and actually venture out into the world, to the Young Kingdoms, as he calls it, to explore this world outside this little niche that Melniboné is. So that's where you would get some of this. It wouldn't be the same political intrigue as Game of Thrones, but you would see these various different lands and cultures and such, which would be very interesting. He's also got a very cool relationship with his sword, Stormbringer, which is a vampiric blade, basically. So it's a demonic entity inside his sword, and it's simultaneously his greatest strength and his greatest liability, because it makes him an unstoppable force in combat, but it requires souls in order to operate, and it demands souls. So pretty much, if you're a friend or a family member of Elric, get far away, because most of those folks end up dead. Anyway, so that's that kind of the anti-hero part about it. That's interesting. Very creative. It's very cinematic. The world itself is really well realized. It was actually a fun nod to Elric in Game of Thrones when Joffrey is given Widow's Wail, the sword. He's asking the crowd what he should name it. And there's somebody in the crowd yells out, Stormbringer, which I can only assume was a nice homage to the Elric saga. Some of you watching might be going, of course the Elric saga, why? But I feel like it's a little more, time has passed, and it's kind of on the, I don't hear a lot of people talking about it. The last time I heard someone talking about making this into a TV show or a movie I think it was in 2007. The brothers who were producers who made The Golden Compass indicated they had talked with Michael Moorcock and they were going to be doing the Elric saga because they loved it as kids, and they were like, we're going to be great at this. Well, that was 10 years plus ago, so I haven't heard anything since. I'd go nuts if somebody was like, we're doing it and we're going to do it right, and I'd be like, whoa, that's awesome. You've got one of the cool aspects of the Elric saga. Let's say, hey, it starts working, and the first season you kind of go through these books. Well, Elric is one aspect of what is called the Eternal Champion. Kind of Joseph Campbell had the Hero of a Thousand Faces, that book. In this case, the Thousand Faces are all various reincarnations of Elric in other dimensions and times. So if, let's say, the Elric saga was something cool and you liked it, you could see a version of Elric as Corum, another character in a completely different dimension, in another culture, but he's got the same issues, this doomed hero quality, in a completely different setting. Or Hawkmoon, or there's all kinds of characters that all have complete series written about them. So Michael Moorcock, all of his books kind of intersect in a really cool way with this Eternal Champion thought. Also, he wrote one of the cool books he wrote was called Fortress of the Black Pearl, which is an Elric centric story. And it was kind of a precursor to Inception, in that Elric has to steal a black pearl, this thing that only exists in the mind of this young woman. So he has to go into her dreams. He's a dream thief, and he has to go through all the different levels of dreamdom and the realms of dreamdom in order to arrive at the fortress and ultimately steal the pearl. I just remember reading that the first time I saw that and read that, and I was like, what? It was just like mind-blowing stuff. It was really, really cool. So yes, there's a lot of violence, a lot of sword and sorcery at its best. I would go nuts if somebody did the Elric saga right. If you've got some medieval fantasy series that you would just go crazy for, let me know in the comments. I will chat about it with you. But my vote for the non-Lord of the Rings series to be turned into a TV show, the Elric saga. Boom. Thanks, everybody. We'll be back next week talking about Westworld Season 2 finale. Really looking forward to that. Bye, everybody.